Cleopatra VII was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt in 69 BCE. Ptolemaic Egypt existed as one of the Hellenistic kingdoms that branched off of Alexander the Great's Macedonian Greek Empire after his death. She became involved with Romans, Julius Caesar, and Marcus Antonius, bearing children with each of them. The Greeks believed that some humans, based on deeds accomplished during life, could ascend to the level of a hero following his death. Heroes possessed certain qualities of a god, such as immortality. Rulers of the Ptolemaic dynasty were divinized in a process that went against these traditional Greek norms. The monarchs of this Hellenistic kingdom lived as gods. The initiator of the Hellenistic period, Alexander the Great, set a precedent for moral deification. Ptolemaic rulers adopted epithets that conveyed their deifications. Succeeding members of this genealogy evolved the deification to be associated with a particular god, such as Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII's label as a new god Dionysus. Cleopatra held the epithet Philopator, denoting her connection and care for the deified members of the family that came before her reign. A stela from 51 BCE, the time of the 18-year-old's rise to the throne, gave Cleopatra the epithet of Thea, goddess. The full description on the stela reads, "On behalf of Queen Cleopatra, goddess, father-loving, the holy place of the association of Isis, of whom the president is the chief." Cleopatra, at the beginning of her reign, was considered a goddess, and the consideration continued in the final year of her reign, 30 BCE. A demonic stela from the aforementioned years stated, "Of the female pharaoh, the bodily daughter of kings, who were on their part kings born of kings, Cleopatra, the beneficent father-loving goddess." Portraiture and physical depictions of the queen also provide use in comprehending the divinity of Cleopatra. Cleopatra adopted the crown worn by Arsinoe II on one stela dated to 39 BCE, and on one relief inside the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. The temple also features Cleopatra and Caesarion associated with the gods, as the mother and son offer incense to the Egyptian deities on the southern exterior wall. Another title describes Cleopatra as the daughter of the Egyptian god Geb, signifying her birth from the divine. The connections of Cleopatra to Isis continued on a coin minted between 47 to 29 BCE, depicting Cleopatra nursing Caesarion, similarly to Egyptian images of Isis suckling Horus. The coin also would resonate with the Greeks, as it would also be accepted as Aphrodite nourishing Eros. A nearly 10-foot tall granite statue portrayed the queen as Isis, with an accompanying statue depicting Caesarion as Horus. Cleopatra's association with Isis was more than coincidence. The queen deliberately chose to portray herself as the goddess of magic and a daughter of the earth and sky deities. Cleopatra called herself Nea Isis, the new Isis. She would appear before large public crowds wearing a robe sacred to Isis. Cleopatra's father chose a Greek god, but Cleopatra chose an Egyptian goddess. This choice did not stop the Greeks from placing a statuette of Cleopatra in the guise of Isis in the Athenian Acropolis. Plutarch described Cleopatra sailing the river Cydnus and donning the appearance of Aphrodite next to young male slaves appearing as Eros. Cleopatra appeared not only as an Egyptian and Greek goddess, but also a Roman goddess. Julius Caesar dedicated a gold statue of Cleopatra within the temple made to honor the goddess Venus. Following her death, Romans halved one of her pearls and placed them in the ears of his statue of Venus standing in the original Pantheon. A residence in Pompeii displays a wall painting that resembles Cupid resting on the shoulder of Venus. The evidence suggests that the painting depicts Cleopatra with Caesarion behind the doors of the Temple of Venus Genetrix, where her golden statue stood. Gold is necessary for understanding the queen and her divine legacy. A 4th century CE inscription found on the Temple of Isis at Philae tells us of a scribe who superimposed gold over a wooden statue of Cleopatra. In the centuries following her death, Cleopatra likely had her statues worshipped throughout the Mediterranean in the cult of Isis. Cleopatra VII became a universal goddess, worshipped throughout the Mediterranean.